Alright, I've got 3 disclaimers this time. First being a photosensitivity warning. This game is full of flashing lights, screen shake, and a lot of bright colors. The second being the usual, I received a review copy of this game from Keymailer and the devs. All opinions are my own, and I was not paid to say this game was good. The third is a content warning about the game. There are a lot of depictions of different triggers throughout the game, and while I'll try to avoid the topics as much as possible, be aware that there is graphic imagery that could be extremely disturbing to some viewers. Please use your best discretion while watching this video, and feel free to click away if you feel this is too intense. For a more full breakdown on what to expect in this game, you can check the Steam listing for the devs' previous game, Lucah, Born of a Dream. Death of a Wish is an arena-based, top-down action RPG developed by Me Less Than 3 and published by Syndicate Atomic LLC, whose gameplay I could best compare to a really sweet combination of Hyper Light Drifter, Devil May Cry, and any FromSoft Souls-like. Though I feel this leans a little bit more towards the Sekiro side of things, personally. We're talking high-octane action, complete with a dodge, parry, heavy light attacks, familiars, and a very deep focus on customization. You can set up 2 different loadouts with different arias, which basically function as your melee weapons, combining 2 per loadout for different effects. Some of these can create a resonance for an even more powerful effect. For your ranged capabilities, you can equip 1 familiar per loadout as well. These little guys do everything from shoot lasers, to shooting bombs, to tornadoes. And you'll see from most of my footage, I really like the shotgun guy. On top of this, you can add more modifiers to each loadout with prayer cards. These will give you power-ups that are very dependent on your playstyle. It's a super slick system that feels great in practice. I feel like I've only just scratched the surface for loadout options, and it seems like there are tons of ways to play Death of a Wish. Now, I mentioned FromSoft earlier, and I wanted to hammer that comparison home. Dodging and parrying are absolutely necessary to progress in Death of a Wish. You're going to get murked super fast if you can't avoid or reflect the massive onslaught of brightly colored flashing attacks coming your way. The parry mechanic is something I personally haven't seen in another game like this. You dodge into attacking enemies to reflect some damage back and open the enemy to your own onslaught. The experience and leveling system is also quite reminiscent as well, though believe me, none of these are bad things. The last gameplay mechanic I wanted to touch on was the corruption. After a certain event early on in the story, you'll have a percentage on the top right-hand corner of the screen, and this number will steadily go up as you engage with the enemy nightmares. How can you combat the constantly growing corruption, you ask? Why, being beautiful, of course. The more stylish you are in your combos, the higher rank you'll receive at the end of combat, and that in turn will knock a bit of your corruption off the meter. You'll have to play the game to see what happens when you let the meter hit 100%, but I really didn't have any issue keeping my meter down until right near the end of the game. Difficulty-wise, I played on normal, at least in my first playthrough, and I found it to be a very nice challenge. Nothing that was too hard or felt unfair, but definitely still kept me on my toes. It always felt great seeing a new enemy type and getting to learn its attack patterns. I have to say, the last section of the game is, however, an absolute gauntlet, and it really pushed me to use everything I had built up in my arsenal at that point, to finally hit the tipping point, and my goodness did it ever feel satisfying when the dust settled and everything was over. Oh, I also wanted to mention that Death of a Wish is very open-ended in progression as well, featuring save point fast travel to give you quick access to old areas in case there are any collectibles or juicy secrets you missed on your first time through. Or hell, stuff that might not have even been there on your first time through. The graphics are awesome, though they may not be to everyone's tastes. It's a very sketchy, chalkboard-feeling art style that reminds me of a lot of an old freeware game called Chalk by Joachim Sandberg, who went on to make Iconoclasts. Another one of my favorite games, actually. Stark colors stick out on dark and foreboding backgrounds in this striking style, breathing life into the simplistic characters. Sometimes some of the visuals can be a bit unclear and jumbled, but I feel like this is design intended to add more to the dreamlike, almost hallucinogenic state of the game. Set a screenshot of this baby in a lineup with anything else and you're definitely going to see a buzz. There isn't really anything else on the market right now that looks or feels quite like this, save the developer's previous work. So, the story. The story is going to be divisive for some people. The best word I can find to describe the story is edgy. And I'm here for that personally. I feel like I'm being transported back in time to the insanely dark, brooding, and angsty D&D campaigns my friends and I would write and run back in, I don't know, my late high school, early college years. And believe me, that's not to say that this story is poorly written. On the contrary, it got me invested very quickly, but again, it may not be for everyone. You play as Christian, a boy determined to overthrow the cult overseen by his father, with a capital F. This takes place in the dream world of Paradiso. You edgelord your way through Paradiso, attempting the four sanctum faiths, the aforementioned father, sister, cardinal, and priest. During his rage-fueled warpath, Christian meets a very colorful, pun very much intended, cast of characters that help fill out the nightmarish hellscape that is Paradiso. Now, to touch on exactly how edgy this really is, there are things in Death of a Wish that could be extremely upsetting to certain people, and I would tread lightly if you're sensitive to things such as extreme depictions and descriptions of violence. That being said, I'm not, and I personally appreciate a story not pulling any punches and unabashedly being the story it wants to be. There are tons of twists and turns that I honestly didn't see coming, and there were a few things that definitely caught me completely off guard. I wouldn't call the story fun, and I don't think that was the intention. I don't think that's what the writer meant for it to be. It has lots of hurt and despair, but also hope of a rebirth and a second chance. The soundtrack is a pile of absolute bangers. The music doesn't always play, there's a lot of tasteful silence throughout the game as well, but I was super excited every time I'd hear a new track fire up. This whole soundtrack sounds like it's straight out of the PlayStation 1 era of RPGs. I hear Nobuo Uematsu, maybe Yoshino Aoko and Akari Kaida, and for context, those are the two composers of Breath of Fire 3, among other things, like a lot of other things. But I hear a lot of their influence in here, and that's extremely cool to hear. Some serious love and musical talent went into this soundtrack, combining high-energy drum and bass tracks with dark, brooding melodies for a very striking contrast of musical themes. The music really has a way of making the already intense combat feel like you're about to reach a breaking point and smash through the tension into serenity. I really wanted to highlight a strange similarity I see here to an old RPG Maker game called Space Funeral. I get the same dreamy, is this real vibe from Death of a Wish that I've only ever gotten from Space Funeral before, and Death of a Wish is a much more complete experience than Space Funeral was. Final thoughts time. Death of a Wish is an extremely competent action RPG providing pulse-pounding excitement through its very fun and customizable combat system. Full disclosure, the story and art style will definitely be polarizing and might not be for everyone. I personally was given intense nostalgia to a time on the old internet back in the early 2000s when basically anything went and people just told the story they wanted to tell, and damn it, that just doesn't happen enough anymore. The art was very striking and I very much enjoyed it. But if you're the kind of person who thinks Undertale or Super Nintendo games look ugly, this might not be for you. I think it looked downright stellar. I recommend Death of a Wish if you want a narrative-driven action RPG with a good amount of exploration and a depressing-ass story with more twists and turns than Snake Way. This is seriously one of the most fluid combat systems I've seen in a 2D melee-based action game in I can't even remember how long. I highly recommend checking out the free demo on the Steam page if you're on the fence about the art or story, and that should tell you all you need to know. Very much enjoyed my time with Death of a Wish, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what stories the devs will go on to tell. The game drops in its entirety on March 11th. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. It really means a lot. And please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the stuff I make, and please have an awesome day. Thanks. Bye.